Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm giving you guys a spoiler-free review of Midnight in the Switchgrass. This movie comes out on July 23rd, and I guys might be asking, how did I get this movie early? Well, did not send it to me, and I'm not telling you guys how I got it. But yeah guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about Midnight in the Switchgrass. I'm going to be going over the good, the bad, and then giving you guys my final take about this movie. Before we get into it, if you guys are new in here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you don't miss any time I upload a video or I go live. But without wasting any more time, let's get into it. So starting off with the good of this movie, I think Machine Gun Kelly, Luke Haas, and Bruce Willis's acting in this movie were fairly good. Machine Gun Kelly really surprised me. The only other projects I've seen him in are Netflix's Bird Box, but other than that I haven't really seen him. He really surprised me. He's only in 2 chunks of this movie, and the chunks aren't even that big, but this movie overall is fairly short. I'm glad it's short, but I felt like the ending could have been a little bit more expanded upon, which I'll talk about later in this video. But I think Machine Gun Kelly was pretty good in this movie. He really did surprise me. Also, Luke Haas plays the kidnapper in this movie, and he does a really great job. This entire movie I was getting vibes of Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners movie that stars Jake Gyllenhaal, and I thought that movie was phenomenal. This movie really gave me vibes of that, but didn't necessarily deliver. Again, I'll talk about in the bad part of the video, but I do think the guy who played the kidnapper did really well. And also Bruce Willis, he was advertised as being the main character, or one of the main characters in this movie. It was definitely Megan Fox mostly, and this other character, which I'll get into later, which I didn't really expect to be good in the movie, but I thought Bruce Willis was good in this movie for the parts that he was in the movie. So the hidden character I mentioned was actually a cop, Byron Crawford, I think his name was, and he was probably the best part of this movie. He felt pretty rushed in my opinion, but he still had a great connection and like character connection to Megan Fox's character, which I didn't necessarily like in this movie, but again, I'll talk about that in the bad. But I think the cop's character was fairly well done, especially thinking about how less screen time he had in the first half of the movie, and they really did set him up well, I think, at least with the hour and 38-minute runtime that they had. I thought that this movie did a great job setting this character up. I thought his character was great, especially with the backstory of his character and how he had a family. He had a daughter, the killer had a daughter, the kidnapper was kidnapping girls. All of those connections and just subtle details really help you care for these characters, and I think the cop's character was very much undermined. I think his character had a lot more development that they could have done without making it overdone, and I think overall his character was just wasted because he was so good at the time he was on the screen. Personally, I thought Megan Fox was the main character of this movie, but towards the end of the movie, I would specifically say like the final act, the cop really seemed to take the mantle of the main character. And again, this is something that's similar in Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners. Hugh Jackman is the main character for most of the movie. It seems like Jake Gyllenhaal is, but in the final act of the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal's character has to step up, and I think that makes him look like more of the main character. Same thing happened in this movie. This movie's not nearly as good as Prisoners, but the same kind of thing happened. You could definitely see the resemblance. This movie overall was super grounded and it had great suspense, and that's one of my favorite parts. Even in like super slow moments, even if you thought something was boring, there's always an underlying hint of suspense, so I really actually like that aspect of it. Also, the last 20 to 15 minutes was absolutely nuts. It really did save the movie, but the acting really ramped up in the last 20 to 15 minutes, and the score and sound editing was also insane in the last 20 to 15 minutes. The reason I say last 20 to 15 minutes is because most of the movie is not this good. The last 20 to 15 minutes of this movie are absolutely spectacular in my opinion. It's the perfect amount of suspense, it's the perfect amount of action, it's the perfect like the dialogue and the writing is so well done, but they end up messing it all up. So now I want to talk about the bad. I'm gonna have to fly through some of these because there's a lot of stuff, but first of all, the editing in 90% of the movie was absolutely trash. Megan Fox couldn't go 2 seconds without saying the word. Her acting was also super mid, and I swear she plays the same exact character in every single movie. I'm not even joking. Like, it feels like it's the same exact character that survives the last movie, and now she's in this one. Also, the main story of this movie just never really worked for me. I don't know what it was. From the beginning of the movie, the suspense was always there, like I said before, but I never actually felt immersed into this situation of this crime, like mysterious world that they kind of dropped us into. I never really connected with any of the characters other than the cop, and I understood the cop's perspective and because of all of the stuff that we know about his family, but overall, other than the cop, I didn't really care for any of the characters. Also, it was like 2 different stories at first, which I did like. I love when movies have 2 separate storylines, 3, sometimes even 4, and then they all connect, but this movie connected them way too late. It didn't really connect until the final act of the movie. It was about 30 minutes left, and everything was just a rush to get connected together, so I didn't necessarily like that. Also, in the final act, there were way too many jokes. Like, I understand jokes jokes in the first 2 acts of the movie, but the final act stuff got really serious, got really suspenseful, and they just started cracking jokes at random points, which I really didn't like. Also, the last 30 minutes were definitely the weirdest part of the movie. Like I said before, the last 20 to 15 minutes of this movie were really good. Best parts of the movie, awesome parts, but they were pretty weird, especially when you compare them to the first 2 acts of the movie. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not weird in a bad way. It's just weird because it didn't really match with the tone of the first 2 acts, but it was somehow still the best act of the movie. Honestly, I saw no real clear vision to this movie until the final act of it, and that's very bad. That's not a good thing. You don't want that, because I honestly felt like the final act of this movie could have been something on its own, separated from the first 2, and I wouldn't really mind. I think the 3rd act had enough context. You get to see enough of the cops family, Megan Fox's character's backstory, the kidnapper. You get to see enough of everyone to where that could have been a movie on its own. Honestly, this movie's ending did not land at all. It was an absolutely horrible ending. The last 3 minutes really screwed up the entirety of the movie. They built up so much in 20 to 15 minutes before the movie ended, and it all went to waste. Like, it literally all went to waste. Like, the last 3 to 5 minutes of this movie were absolutely horrible. The editing was horrible. Everything was so bad. Like, the final act overall felt like you're watching a completely different movie than the first 2 acts, and then the last 3 minutes it went completely back to what act 1 was. The horrible editing, horrible sound design, horrible camera work, just horrible everything, and messed up the entire movie's build-up. So my final take for this movie is that this movie definitely had great suspense moments, but it just threw me off so much when it came to the editing, acting, and poorly executed twists. The final act of this movie really built up the ending to be super phenomenal, giving me vibes similar to Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners, but they didn't stick the landing at all. Overall, I'm gonna give this movie a 6 out of 10. It's only an hour and 30 minutes long, so if you have a little bit of time, I'd recommend checking it out, but I would not go out of your way to check this movie out. Let me know if you guys are excited for Midnight in the Switchgrass in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.